Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and people. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest because they're taking their time to be on my show. I'm joined by my good fraternity brother, Michael Frempong. Now, if you know Michael Frempong, or Mike Frempong, as I like to call him, or Brother Frempong, you know that he is a member of the oldest and coldest fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. But not only that, we also know each other from the best school in Virginia, James Madison. Please don't get me fired, George Mason. They're both great schools. So recently, Mike Frempong was honored as Brother of the Year for our chapter in Theta Rho Lambda. And being that this is a tradition that I like to bring on the Brothers of the Year for just to learn about their experience with Alpha and just other things, just as a way to celebrate them and all the work they're doing in the community. So, Mike, before we get started, give the listeners a little background on who you are.
First, thank you for having me. I definitely am a fan of the podcast. I've listened to a number of episodes, so it's cool to actually be on. A little bit about me. As he mentioned, my name is Michael Frempong. I am originally from the DMV area, born and bred. A graduate of Thomas Edison High School. I know some Mount Vernon fans that you have listening to the show, but a proud Edison Eagle that went off to James Madison. Went off to James Madison, had a great experience, and then moved back to the DMV area, and just have kind of been trying to be an adult since then.
So, for the listeners, maybe, what do you do? What is your occupation? What do you do for a career?
Sure. So I'm an instructional systems designer, which is a fancy title for it's kind of like a teacher or educator. I develop training and other courseware, training-related material for an adult audience. Sometimes it's technical, sometimes it's systems or policy. But yeah, basically I create training content around whatever subject matter you want.
Excellent. Educators through and through.
Yeah.
So we're going to dial it back. What was your, this is obviously being Brother of the Year, so we're going to really have a focus on Alpha in your life.
Okay.
What was your first inclination or exposure to Alpha? Was it in childhood? Was it at James Madison? Bring us back to the beginning.
Great question. So I'll dial it back a little bit even further. My first exposure to Greek life was in high school. My cousin, I'll use the air quotes, play cousin, that I kind of grew up with in church, crossed Sigma at UVA. And then I had another cousin who crossed Delta also at UVA. So those are my first kind of introductions to Greek life, aside from the stuff you saw on TV. I remember seeing School Days as a kid, not really knowing much about it. And then my senior year of high school, they had a showcase where they invited different Greek organizations. Surprisingly, all of them from Mason. Members of different Greek organizations kind of came and talked to the seniors and gave us advice on what to expect. Not necessarily around Greek life, but just what to expect going to college. We had a lot of Greek counselors that I later found out at high school. So they organized it through their different connections. So then I get to JMU. So I have an understanding of Greek life. I don't know the inner workings, obviously, but I'm just thinking, okay, this is another, avenue or activity that's available to people in college if you're interested. So I kind of brushed it off. When I got to JMU, there were charters for all of the Greek organizations except for the IOTAs, but all of them weren't present on campus as far as having active chapters. Only the sororities had active chapters. There was one Alpha, and he was a graduating senior at the time.
Langston.
Yeah, shout out to Langston. And so I didn't really pay it too much attention. And plus, the circles that I ran in when I got to JMU were more focused on other CMIS orgs like ASO, BSA, and a lot of the people that I was interacting with on the daily were not Greek, or at least not Greek to my knowledge. So then I got more involved in these organizations, working more closely with these people. And I later found out that a lot of people on these exec boards for these organizations were in Greek letter organizations. They were in sororities and fraternities. So it was fascinating to me that they were doing all of the essential fun stuff on campus, as far as like organizing these parties, organizing these events. I know BSA did a camping trip. They took us to King's Dominion, still taking classes. And then on top of that, they're in these Greek organizations. So I was like, okay, that's kind of dope that they're doing all of this. They have the time to do all this. They have the skill set to do all this. And they're making this experience at JMU greater for people that are there. Because outside of classes, there really wasn't much to do in Harrisonburg. And I'm sure anyone that's ever been to Harrisonburg can attest to that. So from there, that's what piqued my interest. And so then I started on this long journey of doing research of, okay, well, what are these orgs about? Who are members of these organizations? What are these orgs doing currently? And that research led me to narrow it down to Alpha. And so this was probably my sophomore-ish year that I kind of realized, okay, this is what I want to do if it's presented to me. But then obviously joining a Greek letter organization is a very labored process. So there's a lot of steps that you have to take. So once I figured out what I wanted to do, the next step was figuring out how to do it. And thankfully, being a part of those different organizations, I was connected to people that were inside these organizations. And so I could kind of talk to them and kind of see, okay, how do I go about this the right way? How do I go about this at all? What are the things that I need to do to make sure that the people in the chapter see that I'm a worthy candidate? Who do I need to talk to? Stuff like that. So,
and you forgot a big one that we shared. We was both in Bond.
Yes,
and I remember Brothers of a New Direction, for those that was like Bond.
Yeah,
where I think primarily when you spoke about that, it literally was either alphas or kappas that were involved with Bond, because we did not have a Sigma presence in Bond.
Yes, very much so. Because
I don't think we had any. I think it was only alpha or kappa that had a.
It really was. So yeah, they came back. The kappas and sigmas came back the spring of my freshman year, but then the sigmas I think graduated out later that year. So they were present on campus, but they didn't have members. So definitely Bond. A lot of the other organizations that I mentioned that I was connected with people that were in orgs, they were all sororities. So outside of Bond, there was no fraternity connection of people that you knew. So Bond was very influential.
Now, going back, now this is the first time I ever heard about family. So while you were pursuing it, obviously I'm assuming your cousins were significantly older because they were doing it while you were young. Yeah. Did you ever lean on them? Did you ever ask them questions? Because I think having family relations is also helpful in that.
Yeah, funny story. I didn't. I wanted it to be a surprise because they were so helpful in getting me to college, as far as like reviewing applications, working on essays, other contributions. I wanted this to be like a small gift for them. Like, okay, I did this thing, surprise. So that was the plan initially, but it didn't turn out that way. My cousin actually found out that I was pursuing membership in Alpha through, I guess, I don't know, gossip is the right word, but basically
the networks.
Yeah, a network. Somebody kind of got wind of my activity and reported to him, but they didn't say what org it was for. They just knew that I was doing something. And so I remember going home one weekend and he like hemmed me up to the side, was like, what is this? I heard you're online for this organization. It was the wrong organization that he mentioned. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I promise. He was like, so what are you doing? I was like, you'll see, but I'm not doing that. And so I didn't tell them. until after I crossed. And my cousin, that's a Delta, was actually able to come to my probate. So that was cool. She was in North Carolina at the time, doing her residency. And so she drove up and was with family. And my family, like immediate family, had no real understanding of Greek life. So she was there to kind of be the buffer translator during my probate, but that was cool. So it was nice to share that connection with them. And now when we see each other, it kind of makes the family bond stronger. We have other things to talk about outside of the family. Even though we're all in different organizations, it's still nice to kind of get together and have those friendly rivalries.
I love it. And so, what was some of your memories? They say college days swiftly passed. What were some of your college memories right after you did this? Like you wanted to be really involved, and this is like some memories that you had in college that reaffirmed that you were in a space that you belonged in and that you wanted to be in.
Yeah, it was so a lot of the memories came from like road trips, going and traveling to other schools and meeting other brothers and then other people in other organizations with my chapter brothers was probably one of my greatest college experiences. You're in bond, you're in ASL, you're in BSA, and you work with these people, but at the end of the day, you kind of don't really do too much with them outside of those programs and seeing them in the cafeteria, seeing them on campus. But when you're traveling with people, and you're sharing space and you're learning, you learn like little nuances about people. And so I definitely appreciated that aspect of the college days that have swiftly passed. And of course the step shows, those are always fun. Stressful but fun. Yeah.
What was it? Cut the check? Is that
yes, cut the check. A little phrase that we like to say that we started. Yeah. So that was good times.
So let's talk about the transition to the real world and how did Alpha play a part into that? So you're graduated, you did it. Talk about that early years of transition as a young professional, and then as a young professional, we know, as you are, was it director of membership intake? I don't know, just dean is another word we said. How reclamation is a big issue about the transition from undergrad to grad, but you stayed active that whole time. Talk about that. Talk about that transition from college to your adult life, the real world.
It was good. I would say it was smooth. I can't say that it was smooth completely, but it was easy in the sense that Alpha, yes, it's a lot of fun, but it was very business minded early on. So as soon as I joined in undergrad, we got to work and it was very like business. These are things that I knew, but I wasn't like in the mix of. And so going to conventions, going to different regional and area meetings and working with other professionals, both at the alumni and college level, being at a young age, it gave me like a crash course in professionalism. So when I graduated, it was a smoother transition to kind of, okay, I know if I'm going to an interview, I need to look presentable, or I know I need to do these things, or I know I need to have my questions lined up for after the interview, stuff like that. These are all things that I got through my interactions at the undergrad level that made it so much easier coming out as a professional, as opposed to, I know some programs may have like a crash course for seniors right before they graduate where they get these things. I got these things often. Learning how to run a meeting, creating an agenda. These are all things that we had to do right off the bat after I crossed in undergrad. So it helped a lot in my professional transition.
So did you also think that Alpha, in your regards to the career you chose, as being an educator, was there any influences on that in your career choice, or and maybe not just the technology piece or all that? What was some of those influences of Alpha on your actual career choices?
I think the service aspect. So the model, our Alpha model is, first of all, service of all, we shall transcend all. And so when I got to college, I wanted to be, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And so obviously as that changed, I knew that, okay, maybe not in like the medical field or maybe not in healthcare, but I know I want to do something that's of service. And so by kind of pivoting or shifting to the field I'm in now, instructional design, it's business minded, but it's still of service. I'm helping adults learn how to perform their job tasks a little bit better. And so that definitely correlates to Alpha. Alpha's when I think of alpha, I think of brotherhood, and then the next thing I think of is service. So how can we serve? How can we make things easier or accessible to a larger group of people?
Oh, that's excellent. That's actually really transferable. So, like maybe the vice versa too about the professionalism. You talked about that. You talked about the influence. What was a moment as now looking back or in your current space where you're like, wow, like this is really like easy. The things that I was doing in a service organization is really just bleeding over into my normal 9 to 5, and then maybe vice versa, not as a college student, but now, like where you catch yourself saying, wow, these things are really influencing each other right now.
I would definitely say the time management. Time management is something big that you have to do in college if you're in a Greek org or not, but definitely having to juggle programming and service events and classes has definitely helped me learn how to manage multiple concurrent projects in my professional life now. Because there isn't, just like you go to college, no one's going to wake you up and tell you to go to class, or no one's going to tell you to study. No one is essentially going to tell you, okay, you have this deadline, you need this deliverable by this day. I mean, hopefully they won't tell you. If they do have to tell you, then that might be, you might be in for some other consequences. But definitely managing time while juggling concurrent things, especially with my professional career, and then still being active in alpha at the alumni level, because that is another beast in itself.
Yeah, talk about that. What's the other beast in itself, please?
Yeah, so I currently serve as the chapter dean or director of membership and intake for the Theta Rho Lambda chapter. I joined TRL in probably fall of 2015.
So timeline wise, taking us back, you graduated college when?
Yeah, so I graduated undergrad in 2008, moved back to the DMV, and kind of worked for a little bit. Then I went back to JMU in 2013 for my master's and graduated in 2015. So the spring of 2015, and then I moved back again to the DMV. And so that fall, like I guess essentially after the summer of 2015 is when I joined TRL.
And so you're like bringing us back. You're like, you're getting yourself together. You're getting through your master's. So
Yes.
real world hit, but then you're like, okay, now it's time to be involved with a chapter.
Exactly. I actually reached out to my undergrad advisor, Brother Sean Bates, and said, okay, because even after I graduated undergrad, he was like, okay, so when are you going to join the chapter? When are you going to join the chapter? And I attended some chapter meetings for chapters in the DMV area on the DC side, but I just wasn't in a, I guess, place where I felt like, okay, I can commit to joining a chapter, because it's a huge commitment, as you know. It's financial, it's time, it's all of that. Yeah. I'm still trying to get my feet settled in my career. And so after I graduated with my master's, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I reached out to Brother Bates, and he said, okay, go to TRL. And so I went to their Thanksgiving basket, which is the annual event that we do. And then from there, I went to a chapter meeting. They were like back to back within like a couple of days. And I was like, okay, this seems like a good fit. And so from there, I've just been active. And then being active is not necessarily sitting on the sidelines, but it's actually getting in, getting your hands dirty, doing the work. And so I became director of membership intake in 2019. Yes, 2019. So about a few years after joining the chapter. Prior to that, I was on different committees and I helped out with the foundation, but this is the first time I took an exec board position with the chapter.
Yeah, and so now taking it to the next level, like bringing back that time management. So like, it's really thoughtful, right? Like you had to be like, we have real, so in college and classes, you have all these things. In adult life, you got work, you have bills and all that. Would you say that it's ramped up? You believe that the involvement as an alum is harder than undergrad, or different, or because people can say harder, different. What's your take on it from your experience?
I would say harder because I felt like in undergrad we always had that cop out. I was like, well, I got class, so I can't do it. You can, I mean, you may have class as an adult, as an alumni, but it still has to get done. So on top of your career, on top of your family responsibilities, on top of your whatever personal life stuff you have, it has to get done. You don't have that cop out of an excuse, and so it's definitely more time consuming in that you're responsible to a larger community of people. You're not responsible to just the people on your campus. This is more city or county or wherever your grad chapter is located. So it's definitely a harder commitment, I would say.
Right. And so, like, as you ramped up, I love this fast forward, and then you took on leadership roles within the chapter. I like to always bring it back. What was some of the things that you did in your career that you believe contributed to your leadership role, that your dean role, and then the same thing, vice versa, in the learning?
Some things that I did in my career.
I got an assumption that you're an educator. You got to educate new people.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah.
Like, you gotta like teach.
That's a great correlation. I don't know. It seems easier in my career because the material is technical and it's not necessarily. I don't know. It seems easier to develop a training for how to use this software or how to use this machinery than educating people on such the rich history and legacy of Alpha and what it takes and what we look for. And a lot of that is well, aside from the history, but educating on what we look for is subjective. And so I think that's the hard part. Yeah. I'm a very analytical type thing. It's either black or white. Whereas with my interactions dealing with people, you really have to kind of be a good judge of character. Like, okay, are you coming to us with your interest in Alpha for the right reasons? Or are you just trying to check a resume box, or you want to wear letters or whatever?
Awesome. I don't, I probably should know my background on my guest. Were you a chapter dean, or were you a dean in undergrad? Or when you became, let's say, when you're becoming a dean for the alumni chapter, did you reach out to other deans to get information, being that this was a new role for you?
That's a great question. So I wasn't a dean in undergrad. I did serve in a lot of different other positions at the undergrad level, but and surprisingly, that's kind of why I ran or pursued the position in alumni, because I felt like that was one of the things that I hadn't completed in my journey in Alpha. Of course, with us being a smaller undergrad chapter, I was very involved in the intake process and the IMDP and all that. Well, it was MIP back then, but being a dean and kind of shepherding or helping usher men to Alpha it's a beast. And so it was something that I wanted to experience. It's been a great experience so far. Hard, but a great experience.
Rewarding. All right. So, jumping forward, what has been, now we had the step shows, the road trips. Those were some proud moments. What have been some alumni proud moments that you've had?
I think actually finishing a line, like bringing a line through. My first line I brought through was fall 19. That experience was, I'm sure it was a very enriching experience for them, because these are all men that have wanted to be Owls for their life. But it was very enriching for me to kind of, okay, this is what it takes to kind of help them get across and help them get like, you're basically working with these people that you see something in, and that you're nurturing them through this process so that they can become Alpha, so that they can go on to do even greater work in the organization. And so that was probably my most rewarding experience so far in my alumni side.
What about
that? And sorry to cut you off, but that, and then the work that I've been able to do with March of Dimes, because that kind of, I'm familiar with the program. I've done it, participated in it, but it hits close to home for me. Yeah.
Well, okay. I was about to say, I'm glad you brought that up. So I have I'll say a two-part question, but explain to the listeners about March of Dimes, because I think it's a transferable, not just an Alpha initiative, but it's really important. So I want you to share about that and why that has pride to you. And then I'll ask my second question later.
Sure. So this is like a little promo for March of Dimes. They should probably put me on payroll. But no, March of Dimes is a great organization that basically helps promote and awareness and fund research and do all they can to kind of help alleviate the irregularities and disparities around maternal health and birth. I had heard of the organization prior to getting involved with TRL, and just kind of was like, okay, this is something that we raise money for, but didn't really like look into it until, and this probably answers your second question, why is it so personal to me? Until my nephews were born in 2014. So both of them were born premature. They were born, I think, at like 34 weeks, and I think full term for a pregnancy is 37 weeks. And so it's normal for first time pregnancies to come early, and then it's also normal for twins to come earlier. So I've heard, but they came surprisingly. I was talking to my sister on a Monday, and her baby shower was scheduled for that Saturday. So I get off the phone with her, and then she calls me back and says, "Oh, I'm going into labor." And so aside from them coming early, premature babies doesn't really seem like a abnormal thing, but the older twin ended up getting sick, for lack of a better term. He had a condition where his intestine wasn't necessarily absorbing the nutrients, and so they had to essentially stop feeding him and allow it to repair itself before they could feed him again, which was a very interesting experience. And so he was transferred. They were born at, I think, Arlington Hospital Center. He was transferred to Children's Hospital while they monitored him and all that other stuff. And there's a family friend of ours that's a doctor. And so she was essentially talking us through it and talking us off a ledge. And she suggested that, I think one of the doctors that was treating him asked if my sister and her husband wanted to talk to people from March of Dimes or use this as like a case study for further research, so that in the future, if this happens to other parents and babies, they know quicker ways to correct it. And I was like, I encouraged her to do it, and I thought that was a great idea. And that kind of opened my eyes to, okay, this is a possibility that March of Dimes has by connecting with parents, connecting with families, and doing this research. If this issue arises in the future for some other family, they know, okay, we have research, we have cases that have done it. It's scary, but you can survive and live a normal life after this.
Excellent. And I'm like also like it's personal to me too, because I am a premature baby, very, very premature. And I see the pictures. I was actually in the NICU and all the tubes and really underweight. I think I was only like 4 pounds or something.
Wow.
So, definitely it's a great cause. And I think it's great that you support that. And that's this is a plug. We're not getting paid for March of Dimes, but, Mike does a great job of fundraising, and we try to lead as a chapter in the area.
Yeah.
We ain't the top, but we ain't the bottom either.
I know. I think, and it's a great time. We've come a long way. Obviously, as TRL grows in size, there's more we can do. And so I'm just happy to kind of be a part of it. Happy to do the service that resonates not just with the community that I'm in, but with me.
And a lot of brothers in our chapter who are parents and fathers.
Exactly.
So my transition question was, you particularly said one of your proudest moments was 19, being a shepherd of new people. But let's also talk about, like, you also brought in a line. Was it
21?
21. I was about to say the COVID. I was about to say COVID.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
That was my transition. Is how has being involved, and not just as a dean, but just being involved, your alpha story, your alpha connection, how has it been affected by COVID, and just in general, your experience with this organization for a long time?
That's a great question.
How's it survived COVID for you as an individual?
Yeah, great question. I don't think anyone expected to turn the clock on January 1st, 2020 and not be a normal year as we were expecting. COVID really did, I guess, well, obviously it did a number on the world, but as far as me and my work, it made the alpha work a lot harder, because you're dealing with this pandemic, you're dealing with this uncertainty, and then you're still responsible to these communities because you're still responsible to serve. And so it made it harder to kind of navigate and manage. As far as how do we program, obviously if we can't get together. That's what we're used to. So it required a different level of thinking. It required a lot of innovation, which thankfully wasn't something that was new to Alpha or new to me. So it was just kind of like, okay, how can we pivot? Okay, we can't physically go stuff baskets, but maybe we can send donations or send Instacarts or something like that. And then it required a lot more communication with people that were interested in being alphas outside of the traditional happy hours or the public facing programs that we had. It required a lot more communication on my part as far as finding different ways to connect with people without being in their physical space.
Yeah, and also like still continuing doing the work that March of Dimes. Like, how can we still like? Because you didn't bring up the part like a big part of this March of Dimes support that you do is that we will organize a march and get together in National Harbor, which could not be safe, but we still wanted to contribute. And so I definitely think it was kind of hard, but seeing on the other end, being able to march again, I think we did marching again and all that stuff because it was a good time to meet people and get together.
Yeah, it was fun times to actually get back out there. And so I'm looking forward to doing it again in the future.
All right, so we're going to go to my next segment. It's called Shot for Shot. You get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first? I'll go first.
I'll go first. Okay. So I know you're embarking on a new phase in life with this PhD journey. The quest to be the Black Dr. Phil, even though we technically already have given you that moniker already. My question to you is, what is, at the completion of this journey, what is something that you're looking forward to doing with this new platform, this new title?
Oh, a doctor, besides just being called the Black Dr. Phil.
Yes.
I don't know if that's already trademarked, so I have to look. So I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I'm working on mindfulness and saying one class at a time. And it's so weird because a lot of people I haven't even started the journey yet. And a lot of people are so kind to speak it into existence and say, you got it. I don't know. I haven't even taken one class. I could drop out, but I'm just saying in a positive sense, like people are already pouring me up and pouring into me to say, I don't know. It's just been really nice. I think because I'm getting a PhD in communication, it's going to be infused with media. I don't know, just some way organically. I was always drawn to media. I should have done technology or media. I like major. Yeah, but I should have had SMAD. We had SMAD at JMU, the media design, whatever. I don't know what it stands for.
But I should Studio Media Arts and Design.
Yeah, and now that I go back and I was like, man, I could have. I still love history, but maybe I could have been like a history major that talked about telling stories with media. I don't know. And so now that I'm getting a degree in communication and I feel like I'm being fueled by interest, I feel like there's some way we're still going to have a platform, media, podcasting, public speaking, engagements, keynotes. I believe that door will be open with Dr. Phil. Let's get Dr. Phil to speak, because I have a Dr. name.
So basically, you're going to be on PBS with Henry Louis Gates doing history stuff.
Okay, I never thought about that. All right, I'm gonna put that down.
Randomly came to my mind.
Yeah,
okay,
I was thinking PBS, but I was also thinking more so I was thinking about talking to people, interviewing people, that form of media. But then still, I'm always an educator too. So then I thought my other realm of why getting a PhD made sense is because if I want to stay in higher ed or education, having a doctorate regardless is going to be helpful.
Okay.
So, I was always going between higher ed, doctorate, or communication. I was like, well, maybe let me go with communication because it'd be wider, more interdisciplinary. I could probably now thought about that PBS show. I could be speaking, but at the end of the day, too, if I want to stay put at Mason, potentially being an administrator or dean or whatever, they don't, as long as you have a doctor, that's the credential. So, my thoughts is staying in education somehow. Teaching is always going to be involved. Helping people, service is always going to be involved. And this, I believe this is going to be a way for me to have more reach because, when you're a doctor, you get more people to ask you to do stuff.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
But education is at the root of it. I like to learn. I like to learn what I want to learn. That's another thing too. I was one of those people that not A's and B's and what I liked and C's and whatever and other things.
and
And
everything else. Yeah.
I think I'm really interested in how media works, how communication works, how, I looked at not the syllabus, but the courses, and I was like, oh, wow, there's one on reputation management. That sounds interesting. Like the whole, I'm not getting a PhD in physics, like I'm not
right. Cell biology and stuff like that.
No, not at all. And I don't want to be a doctor, so I don't know. I'm still one class at a time, always just combining my interests, seeing where it takes me, seeing where my learning interests take me. I love well-being, and I want to think about how can I talk about well-being. I like focusing now on black men mental health. How can I talk about communication with that? So I'm just going to do one class at a time and just explore learning. And shout out to all those people that are already giving me like praises before I even took one.
I mean, we see the vision. So I mean,
I haven't taken one class.
On this platform alone, we see what you've been able to do when you have an idea and you run with it. The Ill Feel Awards, like sky's the limit. So we're better by watching you navigate through the journey. So
I appreciate it. Well, here's my random question for you.
Okay.
If I ever meet someone, African brother, most of them are from Nigeria or Ghana.
Okay.
Anecdotally, in regards to community, do you have any like analysis or thoughts on that? Is it like a culture? Like, because I was watching a documentary and there was like this other pivot where like Greek life is viewed as not like acceptable. It's not Christian by certain cultures, by African cultures. I think it was like this Netflix special about a Nigerian. I can't remember the name of the movie, but he was Nigerian and he crossed a fictional fraternity.
Right,
it was a big deal with his father, who was a preacher. You know what I'm talking about, right? It was on Netflix. But then I see the opposite. I see the inverse, where there's a lot of African brothers. So that dichotomy about whether it's accepted or not accepted in African culture.
I think it just speaks to the times, because like I mentioned, I have an older cousin. When he came through, when I came through, maybe because I wasn't in it that I didn't see, it didn't seem like a lot of Africans were in Greek letter organizations. They also weren't as front facing as they are now, given the nature of social media and everything. So I think it's just the times. There is still a big like cultural misunderstanding between the two. My parents to this day still don't understand what it means for me to be an alpha. But yeah, I just think as the times go on, people kind of get more awareness, more access, and so they're more interested. Like now, we could probably start a chapter with the alphas at my church. I don't know all of them.
That's what I was flowing into.
Yeah. There's a lot, and so I'm considered like the old head because I don't even know them all now. They just come up and got letters on. I'm like, oh, okay, congrats.
Yeah, shout out to Abel and Aaron. I was like, that was crazy to see that they're connected. Have you ever, and this is, I guess, my shot for shot is, have you ever gotten that extreme, not controversy, but that extreme kickback about like that Netflix movie? Like this is not Christian or anything like that. Have you had to have that discussion before?
Yes.
I've never had that discussion. That's why.
So similar to the panel that I went to when I was a senior,
yes,
a couple years back, my church and some neighboring churches tried to organize a panel for kids that were graduating and going off to college. And I was kind of bamboozled because they asked me because they know I'm an alpha. And so I'm thinking we're coming to give like our experiences in college and in Greek life. But the moderator just kind of like went in, was like, tell me your worst experience online. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. That's not what this is. And I guess the other panelists were prepped. And so basically the majority of the people there were former Greek members that just felt like you can't do both. You can't juggle your spirituality, your religion with your membership in the Greek letter organization. And I don't subscribe to that.
That's interesting. Well, that was my cultural learning. And I like I said, the communication, like I feel like I want to, like culturally, I think that's for me, the opportunity to see the non-monolithic Black experience through Alpha has been one of the
Yes.
best things to ever happen to me. And particularly, I think that's why like all Black male spaces are very important. You know, like Bond was super important to me.
It
Like,
is.
I call Bond pre-Alpha because it was just
Yeah. I didn't realize how good it was, but you perfectly encapsulated there. Like the Black male experience is not monolithic at all. And so you get that in Alpha, you get that. You have to be intentional about recognizing that. And so
yes.
I'm glad that I could see it in Alpha, and even so much more in our chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I see it. I had a class like that in the 10th grade at Mount Vernon. I had an experience like that in Bond. I had experience like that in Alpha. I think this might go on a little tangent, but I even had that experience with the JMU African American Male Academy, which I was a student of, but you were also a counselor of.
Yeah.
So the importance of these Black spaces,
Very
Black
important.
male spaces as separate to Black male and female. Like there's a space for that. Gender
Yes.
expression, whatever.
Yeah.
There's definitely uniqueness to seeing like when you get a bunch of Black men together, especially put them all in suits and professionalism and all that.
Exactly.
Processed by osmosis, you rise up, you encourage each other. I
Yeah.
think there's a thoughtfulness to that. I think being an educator, I think it's also important to see that for young men. They need that too.
I agree.
Put them together and
Yeah.
let them grow with each other, learn from each other, see that they're different but the same at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked that Nigerian Ghanaian question, because like I also believe that my exposure to different cultures within Alpha has been strengthened. I joke with my wife.
Yeah.
I met so many brothers that I had to go back to Ghana. I had to go to
Yeah.
Nigeria one day just to see my brothers over there. So
Yep.
I attribute that to Alpha a lot. All right. Well, it's been a great episode.
Thank you.
I'm really excited that that you came on once again. Congratulations on being Brother of the Year.
Thank you so much.
What this means for those that are listening is that through Mike's contributions to the chapter, we were so happy. We were not pleased, but we wanted to celebrate him. So he was honored at a recent ball, being the Brother of the Year, which is something not any brother wants or pursues on purpose. They do the work of Alpha, and we want to celebrate them. So well deserved. Congratulations.
Thank
and
you.
I just can't be more proud to know you. Now, the part of the show is called Shout Outs and Plugs. This is where you get to show love to anyone you want to show love to, anyone, and then plugs, things that you are working on, ways that the listeners can connect with you if you want them to, anything like that. So shout outs and plugs.
Sure. So I guess in the vein of the last question you just asked me, I would like to shout out Aaron and Abel. I feel like I've seen them. It's interesting. I've seen them grow from kids, and their mom actually is very good friends with my family. She used to be our Sunday school teacher. But like anytime I see them out and about, they're just great upstanding young men, great upstanding representations of Alpha, great upstanding representations of Ghanaian culture. So shout them out randomly. I definitely want to shout out my best friend Erica and her project Tiny Froze that I've been privileged to work on. It's a animated web series starring a Black millennial who is a therapist by day and battles different bouts of imposter syndrome at night and in her career. Something, not necessarily the therapist part, but imposter syndrome and being a millennial is something that I can definitely resonate with. So I would encourage you to check that out on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. It's at Tiny Froze, TINYFROS. There's 2 seasons out, short episodes, really funny, all animated by her. Which she's a tremendous talent, and there may be other stuff coming down the pipeline in the future. And then my last shout out is to TRL. TRL is truly has made me feel like a home. It's not my home chapter. Shout out to Zadelsa, but it's definitely made me feel like home. So if you're interested or available, we do a lot of different events for the community in the Arlington and Alexandria area. So definitely check us out.
Well, thank you so much. Brother Frempong, it's been great to have you on the show. For those that are listening, please like and subscribe. Please share this episode with your family members and friends. That's how we share positivity. If you have a voicemail for the podcast, you might be featured on it. You can call the number, which is 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. I've done it a couple of times, so some people still send voicemails. You never know.
Wow.
And then give it a like or subscribe, give it a rating or review on Apple or whatever. That helps elevate the podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for spreading positivity, and we're out.
Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.